Yeah, so you want to do it no headphones today?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Let's switch it up.
I put them on and I was like, nah.
Yeah. There is something different about not having the headphones on because it's like, oh, all right, we're here. And then once you put headphones on, it's like, okay, it's game time. So sometimes it's nice to just keep it casual, not have the headphones on.
I agree. I agree.
But cool, you ready to get started?
Let's do it.
All right, Logan Pilcher, thank you for coming on that note. I appreciate you coming on for an episode, dude. I know we've been talking about it for a minute.
Yeah.
And it's good to have you on here. But why don't we start off with Fleet Foxes, why you chose this album. I think it's their debut album to display here. And if you're listening, you can also watch us, see our beautiful faces, this beautiful album cover here. But yeah, Fleet Foxes, what made you pick this one?
Well, I think that this record, it has personal meaning to me just because I feel like I remember when I first heard it, and I remember it being cold outside. You know what I mean? Like, you know, like you listen to records and you're like, oh, it brings me back to this
very
feeling.
specific place.
And I find myself once it starts getting cold, I'll pull out this record again for some reason. Also, I think I have a lot of inspiration with like folk music in general and like singer-songwriters. And I think they kind of flip the strategy of their music because they're definitely making like acoustic sort of organic sounding music, but also it's so lush and so full. It doesn't just sound like one guy and an acoustic guitar. It sounds like a band. And I think that this record challenged me on like what I wanted to do musically. I never sat down and was like, oh man, I want to make a Fleet Foxes record because it's just their sound. I'm not trying to emulate that or anything like that, but it is inspiring because it's like, man, these guys come together and make like lush sounding music and like the harmonies and the layers. And I'm definitely inspired by that when you listen to a song and you're like, I'm not sure how they did that. And with them, I think it's just kind of this storm of like acoustic instruments, you know?
Yeah.
And it kind of like, I don't know, it's beautiful. That's a beautiful record.
Was it kind of like an epiphany? You're like, oh, I can make,
yeah.
people can make sounds like this with just acoustic instruments.
Yeah. I think the percussion on this record and then also just like the harmonies in general are definitely inspiring.
The harmonies are unreal on that album.
Yeah. It's very dark sounding too, if I remember correctly. Like it's kind of like, I don't know. It's just a cool record.
Yeah, the album cover is super strange. Like it just seems like a regular Renaissance painting.
Yeah.
And then you look a little closer and there's so many very weird little scenes going on.
I haven't ever like had this record or I mean like the back of it too. I'm not gonna move it, but the back of it looks cool too. I mean, yeah, it's so cool to like see the record of a record that you love like online or a CD, and it's like you see the actual vinyl. You're like, oh, I kind of like forgot. You know what I miss is CDs used to have DVDs attached to them. You remember when people used to like package things differently? Yeah. When you bought a CD, they would put it. You might have a DVD connected and you get like a live performance or. Oh, whoa. I remember having all kinds of stuff like that. You just don't get that anymore. Like, no,
it's weird. I'm back on the CD train.
Are you?
The last couple of weeks I've been buying CDs instead of vinyl, one because it's expensive. Like I have to really, really want an album or love it already now to want to buy it on vinyl, or if I can get it for cheap. But CDs right now for me are the way to go because I like popping them in the car and just knowing like it's gonna sound a little bit better than streaming. And also I've like supported the artist and I get to feel a little better about myself for doing that.
And there's something nostalgic about it too because it's like totally. I like driving down the road and being like, I really like track 7, and you remember you skip the track 7. Yeah. And I'm like, you don't do that on Spotify. You just know the name of the song, or you know like around where it's placed, and you click on it. But or you save it to a playlist.
Yeah.
You know? But when did you like adopt streaming?
Ooh,
as like your main source.
I kind of remember exactly when I was in school. I think. Well, I remember where I was, but I feel like it must have been 10th or 11th grade of high school. and I was like in the cafeteria, and my friend had Spotify, and I had been getting CDs all the time. And somebody's honking. Sorry if y'all can hear that. And he showed me Spotify, and I was like, "Why would you pay $10 a month?" And he's like, "'Cause you get everything, every song you've ever wanted." And then I was like, "Well, let me try a free trial," and then that was it. Like that's all it was.
Yeah.
But I still would go buy CDs and vinyl. But yeah, over time, it just became the thing that everyone uses.
I held on to iTunes for a long time.
Yeah, I would buy stuff on iTunes.
Yeah, I would buy like artists that I thought I should know about that I didn't know about. I would buy their greatest hits CD. It was like 22 songs or whatever on like road trips and stuff, and listen to it over and over again. Yeah, which was different. It was just like, and then I think around when I started releasing music myself is when I bought Spotify.
Oh, okay.
Because I was like, I want other people to listen to this.
Right, of course.
I'm like, and now I have like, I have Spotify Music and Apple Music and YouTube, the subscription thing for YouTube.
You do have the YouTube subscription?
Yeah. But I don't use them all. I use Spotify. I mean, I like having all of them just because it's like, it's nice to operate it like another user would. True. And like be able to check your profiles, and
that's a good point.
That kind of stuff, and see the experience, because sometimes certain streaming will have different options. Like you can do, different kind of features on there, they have different, like layouts that you can customize. Right.
Do you have Tidal?
Tidal? I don't.
See, that's the one I kind of want to get. Yeah. Because I feel like I've heard that that's the one that really pays artists the most.
Really? So if you promote that, that will be the best.
Yeah, but also, do you remember when Tidal came out? When they announced it? It must have been like 10 years ago.
I don't remember now.
It was, Jay-Z is like Jay-Z's company. Okay. He owns it. Yeah. Or at least when he started it. I don't know if he owns it anymore. Yeah. But it was a whole thing because I remember it was like there was this press conference, and it was like all the biggest stars you can imagine. Like obviously Jay-Z. It was like Deadmau5 with his helmet, his freaking big ass helmet, and like I don't know, Fergie, like just a smorgasbord of who's who of all the celebrities that were endorsing the project. Lady Gaga, I think. So obviously a lot of huge names, and his way of trying to get people to get on that was saying all these other companies are ripping off artists and not paying artists enough, which he was right. Yeah. But all the write-ups at the time were like, who do you think you are to be like billionaires, the richest artists on the planet, saying you're not getting paid enough? But it's like, and in that time I was like, yeah, what do you guys think you're doing? And it's like, well, they're giving something to the smaller artists that aren't going to be what they're getting because Spotify is screwing them over. And then now Spotify has that whole thing where you can relinquish 30% more of your pennies every 100,000 streams for extra push. Yeah. Which is like so dystopian, but of course I'm going to do it if I get the option. Yeah. So it's like, it's such a weird catch-22.
It's weird. It's very... I think I am so thankful for streaming services and for Spotify. Yeah. But also I think that it makes a weird musical culture because it's kind of like,
it's a double-edged sword.
When you go to like certain parts of the world, you get like a very pure form of that culture. And I feel like music in general, it's like it's cool because we're all being able to connect and respect music from all over the world, but also it's like all of our influences are just getting blended together, which is really cool in a way because we're gonna get all this kind of fusion music in the future, and it's like you're not gonna know what inspiration's coming from because literally someone from like me from South Georgia can be listening to music from Asia or Africa and that be their favorite music. All growing up. And they can sing country songs over bongos or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's kind of like there are no.
That would be pretty tight.
I don't know. I just think it is cool. There's a cool aspect, but then there's also, I think with the live music scene, it makes it weird because it's like I think Athens is not like this, but I think a lot of cities are. It's like everyone listens to Spotify and they're not searching their local music scene for artists anymore as much as they probably were in the 90s, you know?
Yeah.
Because
Sure. Yeah, Athens seems to be very good about supporting the local community, because I grew up in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And I lived there before I came here.
Yeah.
And you would think Atlanta, big city, a lot of things going on, but it's almost too big to really, it's like daunting to try to figure out what's going on. There's too many things, too many artists, too many places to go to, whereas here it's a little more centralized and localized.
I agree. Like we lived in Marietta before we moved here, just for like a year.
Yeah.
But it was interesting because like I have music buddies across Atlanta, and it's like you don't really get to, you see them at a show and then you hang out with them maybe once or twice within 6 months, and it's kind of like it's a 45-minute drive to meet anywhere.
Yeah.
It's definitely, I'm the kind of person where I'm an extrovert, but I'm also like a creative person where I like having free time and margin in my life. Like I fight for it.
Yeah.
And so I can find myself being kind of a recluse,
Totally.
Like, so Athens is good because for me and my social like well-being, it's like I can go to a show, like I can work all day, my wife can work all day, and then we get home and we're home at 6 p.m. and we're like, you want to go to Parker's show? Like Parker's playing at the rooftop, let's go.
Yeah.
Like I like that it's a 5-minute drive, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's like I love supporting other musicians and like living that lifestyle where we're going to shows and enjoying the music scene. But also it's like it's not like Atlanta where you're like, do we go risk our lives to go watch this show? I'm like driving from Marietta to Decatur is like hell.
Dude, it sucks.
Dude, it's terrible. And
yeah,
I'm like,
Marietta's just far enough too from like really anything.
Yeah. But that was my experience in Atlanta, and this is like a breath of fresh air. It really is, and it's cool that there's things happening every night of the week.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
that's what I've really enjoyed about living here is the supportive community and the tightness between everybody and all the venues, and just it's a very supportive place. You did mention something earlier that touched on something I wanted to talk about with your new song, Always Mine, in parentheses, but different.
Yeah.
And what that is, for if you guys haven't heard it yet, is it's a new rendition of your song, Always Mine. So one, I just wanted to talk about what made you want to do something like this, write basically a completely different version of a song that's already out. Are you going to continue to do that? And then the thing that really struck me with what you said that I already wrote down, which was, do you feel like within this landscape of social media and constant consumption and wanting more from other artists, do you feel like more artists are going to do what you did because people will want that?
I think for me, it was more of a, like doing that has been an idea of mine, because that song was actually technically the first song I ever recorded, the original version, Always Mine. I had like a normal job. I was working at a church as a videographer, and I had this like deep desire to record my own music for some reason. It's hard to explain. I love talking to people about their like origin story in a way.
Yeah.
And I'm like, mine is interesting to me because I was really like, I had a creative job and I was surrounded by, cool people. It was a cool job. But I just found myself like I always loved music, and really my origin story starts way before that. But I had a moment in high school where I had a buddy of mine, who was a producer, and I was inspired by him and loved music and loved writing and recording, but I didn't do much of it, and I didn't think much of myself in it. I didn't think it was a viable option for me career-wise or anything. Yeah. But then Always Mine, it's a special song to me because I took a week off from work, and I had this like idea in my head of a bunch of songs. But that was one of the first ones that kind of came together for me.
Yeah.
And I recorded it on acoustic guitar. I produced it in my room, technically in my closet. I had like a little closet where I'd put blankets up and recorded.
Classic, yeah.
And I didn't know what I was doing. I had no idea about anything. But I recorded that song, and then now I think I did that in 2018 or 17.
Okay.
It released in 2018, but now it's 5 years later. So I was looking at it, and it's my top performing song. It just happens to be the song that people like. People like that song, and it's kind of, I think it's been added to some personal playlists and things like that. It's never had any like Spotify love to it. It's all like organic in a certain way.
It's great.
Which is great. But it's a song that also is like so juvenile and like and simple, the simplicity in the production aspect to it. So it was a song to me that I was like, I want to go back and redo this song and kind of just turn it on its head. And I ended up changing like the structure of the way the delivery of the verses are. The other ones are very straight, and this one's a little bit more swing, which was fun to change up that. And then kind of leaned on a bass line for the chorus instead of a guitar part. And back then I was very much like I was just a guitar player, and that was all I had. That was the only tool I had to create. So it was fun just to redo it, honestly, as just a celebration, because that song hit 400,000 plays, which is a lot for me because that's the top song I have. Yeah. So whenever I hit that, I was like, oh, let's redo this, and basically I'm working on an album right now, but I kind of stopped doing the album, switched focus to this single. Yeah. Did that single, and then now I'm kind of going back to the album that I was working on prior to doing that. But for me, it's just, I don't think it's necessarily something I did because I'm like, the fans want this new version of the song. It was more of just like, it was a very clear way to kind of show the development of myself as an artist. And like this one, I utilize, a lot of production stuff that I do in my room. That's like, it's just like an updated version. That's kind of a fun other side of the coin.
Yeah. I love it. And part of it, maybe I actually heard that one first.
Yeah.
Because when I was starting to like listen to your stuff, that had just came out. So it was the first thing.
Yeah.
And I knew that's what we would talk about. So it was kind of funny to hear.
You heard it backwards.
I heard it in reverse. Yeah. In a way. And both are great. Maybe it's because I heard it first, but I feel like in general, I also just like but different version because of the drums and like just the groove to it. And I love a nice groove. Yeah. But that's cool that you have essentially two different versions of the same thing that, can reach multiple audiences.
Definitely. And when it comes to, production and all that stuff, it's like, I don't know why I made it the way that I do either version. I'm kind of oblivious a little bit to some things.
I feel that.
And I just kind of cook up things and things happen. And it's not very, I didn't put much identity. I was like, I want to re-record the song and see what happens. And that's just like kind of what happened. And
you just kind of go with the flow.
And it's like, cool. 'Cause
it's a fun place to be when you don't really know where you're going to go with something.
Yeah, for sure.
Just see how it works out.
Yeah. The problem with that is like, I made a whole record during COVID, and that record, it was kind of that exact thing where it was like, I was just in my room. I called the record, what is it? It's too long.
Yeah, it's a long one.
It's like most days. I call it most days.
And then in parentheses, I'm dreaming something.
As most days, I'm trapped in my room, dreaming of a world I don't know. Which is a line from one of the songs. But that production to that record is like exactly that. It's like no rules. Yeah. Just me in my room, kind of like hacking away at songs, and the identity of those songs are kind of like interesting because when I go play live, I play a few off that record, but I'm like, how does this one work? I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how to play this live. Like it's like a 3-chord song with some weird synths. I'm like,
Right.
I'm like, I don't. But it sounds awesome on the record to me. So it's like, whatever.
So typically that comes first for you,
What comes
figuring out how to record it before you figure out a live setting.
I will say for that COVID record.
Okay.
Yeah. But not typically. Normally I'm a guitar player and I sing and I just write a song on guitar, sing the song, and if it's a good song, it sticks.
Yeah.
And if I don't feel it with a guitar in my hand, I kind of move on.
Yeah. You know, I read something on Music Mecca. It was an interview you did with them.
Yeah.
And it was, here, let me just pull up the quote. You said, "On days where I'm inspired most, I will conceive several songs in their beginning stages," which I thought was very interesting just because the way I don't know if that's what you would say is your ideal writing session.
As that is still, yeah.
It still is? Okay.
Yeah.
Because that interview was like 2 years ago. But for me, I feel like the idea of being able to bang out multiple songs, even if it's just the beginning stages, would be very hard for me to detach from one. It's like as soon as I have a grasp, you know, like a fish on the fishing line, I'm reeling it in until it's in, or until I get like burnt out and don't really like it anymore. So that's interesting that you can detach from something after like you're like, okay, that's a good intro or verse, and then move on to something new. Is that like what's that like for you?
Well, my I kind of have it may be like a defense mechanism with songwriting, or like a way to protect myself, because I have been doing it like since 2018. I've been writing songs and I kind of accepted this identity of I'm a songwriter, and I'm just obsessed with it. I love lyrics. I love the story of the song more than the chords and the music of it. And I'm obsessed with it for some reason. I love music too, so music has to like inspire me, but then the lyrics and the story, whatever comes, is what keeps me there and what makes me want to see it through. But the story of like the way that the song, it can be emotional. You know, it doesn't have to be super linear of like, you know, a story, but whatever's there that's keeping that the touch on it that I feel like is the creative thing, I have to have pretty early on. And so what I do is I usually just have my phone, like a voice phone, and I know whenever I'm tapped into it, whatever like the inspiration, like I'm feeling it today, like I'm gonna write today, which I don't write every day, but when I do write, I like basically clear out my whole day, and I'm like, I'm feeling it today, and then I go. I don't put any like backbone to the tracks or to the songs, because I want them to be in that like magical world of like not knowing yet. So what I do is kind of voice memo things, and I'm playing, and I'll find a rhythm or a chord progression that I like, or a riff that I like, and start singing over it, and I'll kind of land on something that's kind of cool, and then I'll stop the recording and I'll label it as whatever that is, you know, and it can be whatever. It can be a random name, like it could be whatever the feeling. It could be jellyfish. You know, you're like,
dude, I almost said jellyfish.
Dude, we're on the same.
That's crazy.
Yeah,
fuck, I should have said jellyfish.
It said jellyfish, but it could be.
I think you did this. That's maybe what I thought of jellyfish.
Well, I think like, and then you just keep going down. So instead of trying to put a story to it, then I try to keep it in that baby stage. And the cool thing about that is whenever I start to make a record, I start to put on my glasses, you know, and then I start to get more focused and more like strategic with things. And once I start getting strategic with things, that's when things start to get barriers and walls on them. And it's like, once I make something what it is, it's less moldable. It's less, it's more like fragile. You know what I mean? It's like this is what it is. I'm giving this song identity. And I find that whenever you do that is whenever your song hits the timer, or hits the it's like you put it on the shelf and it has a shelf life. And that shelf life may be a year or 2 years, but you better start rolling, because you're gonna record that song, you're gonna release that song, you're gonna promote that song, and you don't want to be out of gas with it. So for me, before I start writing the song and start putting together that project, I ultimately have already know the identity of what I'm going for a lot of times, and then I have all these baby songs that are like, I'm like, I'll pick this one, this one, this one. These are all kind of grouped together nicely, and then I start putting lyrics to them, and I start making the actual demos for the stuff, and so I find that helps me, because if I go through my voice memos, I just have like this endless supply of like little nuggets that can bloom into songs. And so I don't really, if I feel really inspired, like I touch on something that it's just like, oh my gosh, this is just like emotionally pulling out of me, and I'm like, I gotta finish this song. That happens on occasion. But most of the time I'm just feeling things out, and it's like a little idea here and there, and then I'll stick with it too. Like it'll be running through my head for weeks, and then I'll put lyrics together, and lots of times it just kind of happens organically after that.
Yeah, that's very interesting. To like have such a plethora of voice memos. Like I feel like, oh, I'll come back to this, and I never do. And then there's like hundreds of little tidbits on my phone that will never see the light of day.
Well, what I like to do is whenever you're on a long road trip, and I like, sometimes I'll force myself to listen through a lot of them and start labeling them, and you can favorite them too, so you can kind of go through and maybe even delete some stuff too. Like this sucks, delete that. You know? And you can kind of do it when you're like driving. I feel like is a good tester, because it's like, oh, this is cool. Like I have found, I make demos all the time, and like before I released my last record, I was showing my wife songs that she had never heard before. And there's actually a song on there called Young Blood. That's a kind of a slow burn, sort of like, I would say like weird. It's like Leonard Cohen meets like a Bon Iver. And I'm trying to think of it's kind of a weird song, and I just displaced it. It was like, whatever, this song, and I showed it to her, and she's like, oh my god, this is going on the record. And I was like, really? Whoa. I should finish it. And so I finished it, and it like ended up being one of my favorite songs on the record.
Whoa.
But it's like those moments where you like pull something back up, where you're like, oh, this exists,
I feel like I always have recency bias. Whatever the newest thing I did is what I'm most excited about. Which sucks for like all the things. It's like that meme of like the guy looking back at some other girl, and his girlfriend's like, what the hell? It's like that new song that I just started versus the 100 that I could be writing that I'm like almost done with.
There's a little bit of like the mystery of that. It's less defined,
right?
So you're like, oh, this could be the one. And I feel like as songwriters, we're all trying to just like one up our own songwriting.
Yes, and that brings up a question I wanted to ask you. How do you feel like you've progressed the most as a songwriter in general over the last few years since you started in 2018? And then I'll let you answer that first.
Well, I will say I have this weird belief that like we're all like only capable of so much. Like you can only hold so much. Kind of like the rat in Cinderella, like that's like picking up the corn. It's like holding the corn. And he tries to pick up more corn, ends up dropping all of it.
Right.
It's like I kind of feel that way creatively, where it's like each season of my life, I was very in tune with different specific creative techniques, whether that being playing a guitar or the way that I produced the song. Like I had a certain ear or a certain attention to detail for each thing. And I feel like the more I learn, the more I forget. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's like I progress, of course, but also it's like I don't necessarily. I feel like I'm getting better. I do, but also I feel like I'm kind of just moving. You know what I mean? And so right now I'm in a space where I like kind of force myself not to play acoustic guitar for like probably 2 years. Like since COVID, I bought electric guitar. I kind of went into electric guitar world.
Oh, wow.
Amps, like pedal boards, nerded out.
Yeah.
Went there, and I'm kind of on the other side of it now, which feels great. Like
I feel like everybody's got to go through that.
I needed to go through it just for personal growth. I feel like creatively, and I wanted to be capable. I didn't want it to be like something that was alien to me, because I love electric guitar players, and I've always like incorporated them into my music, and like other buddies who play, whether that be Tommy or Hogan played some stuff for me. He played, and then I have buddies in Nashville that have played for me as well, like Blake Talent. He's a great guitar player. But Landry Loudmore, another one. I got so many friends. Honestly, that my favorite guitar players are my buddies, and it's like in a way that I'm envious of them, and I'm like, oh man, I am an acoustic guitar player though. Like, that's my bread and butter. You know,
like rhythm guitar specifically,
like finger picking acoustic guitar. It's like, I can sit there all day and write on it, and it's like home base for me.
Yeah.
But also, finger picking acoustic guitar sounds terrible on electric guitar. So if you like write if you like write like a acoustic guitar part, it can sound really cool, like open chords, and then like you pick up an electric guitar and you try that. A lot of times it will just be like ringy and weird, and you're like, this isn't right. So for me, it was important to me like to spend some time with an electric guitar, and I did. And honestly, the whole next record is like an electric guitar record, which is fun for me. And I have a lot of influences with. I like Madison Cunningham and Blake Mills, and like I like a lot of electric guitar players, especially people who are lead like front people for their bands and play. I like that because that's kind of who I am. I'm like, I lean on other guitar players on occasion, but most of the time when I'm playing live, it's me and a bass player and a drummer, and it's just nice to have an electric guitar in your hand, because then you just can take the song to extravagant differences. Like you can bring them down to simple, or throw some drive and throw some effects on, and be able to, instead of just being acoustic guitar.
Right.
So I think that is the thing that draws me to that. But I would say that yes, a simple question. And the simple question was, how do I feel like things are changed since 2018 to now? And I would say now I am less focused on writing a song that sounds perfect with me solo. I used to just be obsessed with like, here's acoustic guitar hook, here's your first verse, here's your chorus. It all feels right. Now I am a little bit more willing to let go of some of that identity of like the acoustic guitar guy, and let some of the weight fall on other instruments. And I think that has affected my art in a big way.
Sure.
Also, just getting married. I think I think prior to now, there are a few songs on the last record that are like upbeat love songs, but every single love song ever written prior to my relationship with Jordan was all wishful thinking and hopefulness, you know, like always mine. The words are someday I'll find home. The picture in my mind. It's like all this like forward thinking kind of stuff. And there's a lot of songs sprinkled in there that are like about all kinds of subjects. Right. But ultimately, that's a huge shift. You know, whenever you go, okay, I'm not looking for anything anymore. And I think that has affected my songwriting in the aspect of I don't feel as true singing a sad boy lonely song. Yeah. You know, like singing a lonely sad song. Yeah. Kind of.
You've changed, so the subject matter is going to change.
It changes, and it changes dramatically. So this next record that I'm working on actually is like just about the new struggles that I face. Like it's not that, but it's a whole new array of, of things. And I don't know, I'm excited to kind of dig deeper into the new mindset that I have. And I feel like it takes time. That's probably why I've been almost married 2 years, and that record came out. I've made that other record before I was married. So it's like the next record I feel like is going to be like kind of a new perspective on relationships and all that stuff. So
where do you want to see yourself exploring in the future, either songwriting wise, production wise, anything?
I think that for me, I feel like I'm always exploring in a way. So in some ways, I kind of want to come back down.
Okay.
Like my last record was pretty experimental, but this next record I'm thinking is probably going to be something that sounds a little bit more like five to four guys in a room playing songs.
Okay.
And even though it's probably mostly, me and other friends like recording remotely, but like the identity of the project, I'm probably going to try to keep it as, you listen to it and you go bass, drums, guitar, keyboard, vocal, band,
Yeah.
And I think that's honestly a new thing for me, because it's like I've always just kind of recorded my acoustic, recorded my voice, and then been like, what other candy can we add? Do we need drums? Do we need bass?
Right.
That's always secondary. So this new record is already, for example, I challenged the guys I normally play with. I have two buddies, Ben Lauermore and Luke Seeger, who play with me, and they're both from Pensacola, Florida, and I made them play like 8 new songs with me for a tour earlier this year. And honestly, it was just like a test run for the next record. Yeah. So I was like, it was a challenge. I challenged both of them to learn.
So you wanted to play with them these songs before you recorded them?
Yeah, I did that. And also for prep, I'm kind of weird in the way I do things. Like I had Hampton come up. Do you know Hampton?
Dude,
I
love Hampton. He just came in last weekend to help me record a new song. Yeah, and he's the man.
He is. He is someone. I thought it would be interesting to challenge myself, because usually recording and writing is very solo for me. It's like a solo endeavor. And I was like, these songs were still in their baby stages. They had lyrics and melodies and chords and everything, but I hadn't documented a demo yet.
Yeah.
Just voice memos. And I was like, instead of doing this by myself, I was like, I'm going to pay Hampton to drive down from Chattanooga and hang out for 2 days. He hang out for him and basically work him like a dog. Like me and him, I was like, dude, you all right? He was like, but he was game for it, and I knew he would be, because he's a fantastic drummer, and he's got
a great ear for rhythms.
Yeah, great ear for rhythms, and also has an interesting musical taste.
Yeah,
and has chording wise challenged the songs. So he goes, what about this? What about this? And I feel like bringing him on early in the writing process of, like, the songs were written like the verse, chorus, bridge kind of thing, but he was like, what if you go here? And it's like not every he has a lot of ideas, and not every idea is stuck, but just having him involved in that early stage kind of challenged the identity of the song. Yeah. So the song's already demoed out. I've even tracked drums and bass. Like, it's like the record's basically bones done.
Yeah.
But it's interesting to see, like, bringing someone in to challenge your perspective on things early on, rather than when it's too late. It's like, oh, I'm already in love with this. Like, you can't. Right. Yeah. I'm like, we're not putting that chord in the bridge. Like, I love the E minor. E minor sounds fine to me. And he's like, what about this? And I'm like, but it was cool to kind of bring him in on songs that had not been fully formed yet, so that I wasn't so precious.
Yeah. That's a weird place to be in when something is already done, like, solidified in your eyes, and somebody doesn't quite recognize that. Like, I'll send a song to my buddy. I'm like, it's basically done. And he's like, yo, you should try doing that. I'm like, brother, it's too late for that.
Yeah, like, I don't send things to people anymore, dude.
I get it. Dude, sometimes though, I'm like, I just want the validation. Yeah. Just tell me it's good. That's all I need
is my wife to dig the song. Like, that's the biggest.
That's a good barometer.
Well, it's pretty cool because she's got a great music taste. Yeah, and she's a great gatekeeper. I'm like, she's like, honestly, it's like, if she doesn't dig it, I'm not gonna put it out. I'm like, so. It's interesting. I'm not like making music specifically for my wife. Like, it's not like that.
But you trust her judgment?
I do trust her judgment, and she likes different music than me. Like she loves country music, and then she also loves like anything that's like band and just really energetic. She likes energetic band music, which I'm like when we went and watched you play, she loved your set. Like
that meant so much to me.
Yeah,
You were like, dude, she never compliments
dude,
people
she
or
really
whatever
doesn't.
it was.
She's like, that was okay, and we'll leave. But she loved your set, man.
That's cool.
Like, but I think what you and your guys, like what y'all have created live is cool because there's a nostalgic aspect to it, especially with like the horns and who's the guy playing guitar for you right now?
Harrison.
He's killing it.
Greg,
like,
from the echolocations. Shout out.
Yeah,
he's awesome.
Yeah, I listen to some of their tracks too. It's good stuff. Like
they're very nostalgic sounding.
Yeah, and I feel like having him as a partner on stage I feel like the identity is like you got it. You got
that's cool, man.
Cool identity. Which it's rare to see a band live and go like. Usually, in most cases, I'm a little bit confused, but I'm like on the identity of what they're going for.
Right.
And I feel that way about myself. Like I'll go play a show live, and I'm like, I'm not quite sure what I was going for. It's like it's just Logan Pilcher, and my friends, and we're like, but you guys, you felt like a band, which is cool, man. It really sounded
awesome.
Thank you, dude.
Yeah, that means a lot to hear, and I do want to have some sort of identity. It is a little, it's a little weird when. I'm jealous of people who, and I'm sure you might feel similar in some ways, people who are in a band, and it's like, this name is so cool, where it's like, my name, Parker Whirling. It's like, anybody can have any sort of feelings or non-feelings about what that name means.
Yeah.
But like a band, like, whether you like them or not, Muse.
Yeah.
Like, that's a powerful name. Or like, Red Hot Chili Peppers, like whatever. All these names, they immediately conjure up something and can have a specific image or identity. Whereas it is weird when it's just your name. It's like it does kind of force you to figure out if you like the music first.
Yeah, I think that, Athens is probably the first place where I've ever lived where bands are the thing.
Yeah. Okay.
For me personally, like I think that we think of bands and we love bands because they're kind of rare. Pop music is mainly names or a project. It's a name. It's just a girl with a name.
Right.
Or like a guy with a name. It's usually one person who's pushing the ball down the field. And even bands, usually there's a lead. But bands are interesting, I think, because it's sort of a bold move. For me, I feel that way because I'm like, I'm very confident that like I can make money and survive myself. But then once you add a few members, it's like it's a bold and it's a confident move. And I think it's kind of like badass, like the way that if someone goes, I have a band, there's 5 of us, and we're gonna make it. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because I'm like
team sport now.
To be truthful, it's like you have less of a chance. Like it's like you have 5 people to share all the money with. It's like it's kind of interesting. I think for me, I grew up with a bunch of brothers. I'm like middle child syndrome. So as soon as I got out of my house, I was like, I don't need brothers. I'm like
yeah.
Which I shout out to. I have a brother band called Flintside Drive that I help them produce. I produce songs for them, which is fun. That's kind of my outlet to go.
Those are your real brothers.
Real brothers. Yeah.
Oh, whoa, cool.
Yeah. So I feel like my whole life I had people like in my ear telling me what to do musically.
Yeah.
And so whenever I got out of that, I was like, man, I can just create, and there's no one I have to like ask.
Right.
And battle with like for opinions. And so for me, I kind of knew very much early on. I was like, yeah, I'm a solo artist. But anyone who's a band, I respect them because I'm like, first off, you have to get along. Yeah, that's difficult. And then second off, it's like finding musical identity among peers is difficult to do, and then also really cool when you do it. Like you guys have done it right. Like when y'all play together, I was like, man, like that is a sound, and it's like song to song. It's just like that. This kind of identity continues. It doesn't ever break.
That's cool, man.
Yeah,
I appreciate you saying that. And it also helps, like, when it is a name, it's like, who's calling the shots? Like,
Yeah.
it's nice to have, it's good to have like a quote unquote leader, somebody that's steering the ship,
Yeah.
so that you get to the place you're trying to get to, right?
Yeah.
If it's a band name and everybody is equal parts, y'all all better be pretty synced up on where you want to go.
Yeah.
Like, and there's plenty of times where that doesn't happen. Like, Radiohead's my favorite band ever, probably. And they were, I don't know if you know about, between OK Computer and Kid A, they went from being like the biggest rock band in the world to like putting out the strangest album anyone has ever, put out subsequently. And it was weird because like it went from the band as a band making the music to Tom York and Johnny Greenwood, and then like what's his name? Of course, I'm blanking now. Their producer, Nigel Godrich, and like the other three guys kind of just fell by the wayside, and they were like, "What do we do?" Because it became like a lot of electronic music, and luckily for them, they ended up still making a masterpiece and figuring it out. But that's really hard for any band to navigate when, especially after a good amount of years and success happens. How do you break away and all of a sudden things just change dramatically and not let that affect your ego?
Yeah. Well, I think that the best artist, which I feel like Tom is probably, I would consider one of the best artists in the world,
Yeah.
But I'm like, I feel like they're in it for the right reasons, and they're just in it to get scratch that itch ultimately. Yeah. And it just so happens that scratching that itch is beautiful to everyone. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And for some reason, that record must have been an experimental season for him. And he was like, screw all the success, screw all the glory. I'm going to make what I want to make. And there comes a point where, like, I don't know, there's a David Ramirez quote. You ever listen to David Ramirez?
No.
He has a song, I think it's about songwriter, about art or something in general, and he says, when you, I think I might mess this up, but he's like, when you mix art with business, you're just shooting an empty gun. And it's like, it's true. Like, I was doing some interesting research recently, and I was like looking at top searches for creativity, because I was like, well, I want to see what like people are searching. I'm weird at. And on Google, one of the top searches is, what's the highest paying creative job? And in my personal opinion, if that's what you're searching, you shouldn't be a creative.
Whoa.
Like, if you're trying to like,
you heard it here first, folks. Don't be looking up highest paid creative jobs. Just be creative.
Yeah. Well, it's like, for me, you're in it for the wrong reasons. And to me, I knew early on that being an artist is a sacrifice, and that like it's going to, like, you're not going to be able to be the same. You're not going to be able to do it all. You can't do it all, And if you, I don't know, like if you have the choice not to do it, then don't do it. Like
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people are business oriented in art and do it well. I'm not talking trash about them. If you can manage it and you can do well, then do well.
Yeah.
But it's like your heart, I feel like still has to be in the art. And like, I feel like Radiohead is a good example of that. Like, they don't give a crap, but they're just making cool stuff.
Yeah.
And that's just the way it is. And I think for me, whenever I try to remind myself of that, because I can get a little bit like, maybe I should have my ducks in a row, and like,
right.
And I'm like, but no, like, I've chose this life, and it's honest that like the art will probably benefit from me focusing on that more so than the business. But
it's a give and take.
It's a give and take. You have to wear two different hats.
Yeah.
And it's like, which one's your favorite hat?
Right.
And for me, the artist side is, and I try to focus on that. And I truly believe that like, if I'm prolific and I give myself to the songs, and I also, one thing I do is I see myself when I promote, which this may be bad advice because I don't know what I'm doing, but the only way that I can do it is I see the songs as like the songs deserve to be promoted. The songs deserve to have, a visual made for it. Or the songs deserve this, because I'm proud of the art that I've created. rather than trying to reason with myself, like, why should I make a video of myself doing, like, if I think about it like that, I'm not going to do it. But if I think about the song and I'm like, if I were to hear this song and I wasn't connected to me, what would I want? I would want something, you know?
Right. Yeah, we are too close to it sometimes to give it the proper attention that it deserves, especially because we've spent so much time with it from the very beginning to the recording to the releasing, and then all the days in between where you're like self-doubt, all these things coming in, you know, and then by the time it's out, you're like, I just want to move on. But if you go that extra step, you most likely won't regret it.
Yeah, and I feel like I said, the songs deserve it. And it's like, it's not you. You have to swing all the way through. You know what I mean? And if you're going to put in the time and the effort to write it, and time and effort to record it, and the time and the effort to release it, you might as well promote it. You know, and I have a lot of buddies who have great art, great records, and like they don't swing all the way through. They just don't plop them out there. And maybe one day those things will take off. But also it's like, you just don't. I mean, I feel like you don't want to. There is such thing as going too far, you know, like focusing solely on the release of this one thing and putting all your eggs in one basket, you know, and then not creating ever again. Like, I feel like you got to live a lifestyle of creating all the time, and then sometimes you have some winners in there. That's for me. I'm just like, every now and then I get a release and it hits right, and it's like, oh, cool, that one worked, and moving on, you know?
Right.
And
you can't dwell on it. Same
really
for the opposite.
Yeah.
If it's like, oh, that did not do as well as I was hoping, well, don't dwell on it. Just make something else.
Yeah. Well, I think the advice that I've heard from people that are successful in any kind of creation way, like they create content all the time, or whether it's a YouTube channel or a podcast or it's like you, what you're doing, you're being consistent, and you're like the promotional aspect of this podcast. Like, you could focus on trying to promote one episode really, really hard, or you can just keep the ball rolling, keep creating, and it's like if you keep creating, honestly, that's usually the best promotion.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to tell myself. I'm like, you're gonna be 151st episode, so it's like crazy to think that it's been this long, but it's like the only reason I keep doing it is because it's like, I don't know. I do agree that the consistency is the best promotion, because if I only did 3 episodes, it'd be a lot harder to convince somebody to come on than if I've done 150, and then they're like, oh, clearly he knows what he's doing and wants to keep doing it, and he's passionate about it. And it's like, that alone is a promotion technique, I guess, in a way.
Yeah. But what's your I mean, I know you have a lot of, like, you used to be an actor, right? Or you still do that?
Still it's just not as much nowadays, but with acting, it's like you're kind of just at the whim of if somebody chooses you to be in their thing. Whereas with music, I can
pick it up,
decide anything I want, you know.
Yeah. So you have music, you have this podcast, you got the acting. Anything else you do?
I mean, in with acting, I'm making a short film with my friend. Cool. So now I'm like doing the producing side of it, and like we wrote it together as well. So, but that's like kind of a very new thing, and I don't know how much I'll really do that going forward, just because, oh my God, it's so much. Yeah. Producing like a movie, it's a short film, but still, it's like so. It requires a lot of love and a lot of energy. And
to do it well.
To do it well, exactly. And thankfully, it's not just me. It's my friend who's really doing a lot of it. But I learned after starting it, I'm like, oh, this requires a lot of love, a lot of energy and passion that I have really reserved for music. Yeah. And it's just, as much as I could try to like force that love and that passion for this thing. And I'm not trying to say I'm not passionate about it. I'm just saying it is a big effort and I'm willing to make it. But over time, it will have to be like I feel like I'd be doing it a disservice if I'm the one that's like doing all of that, because that's how I feel more about music.
Yeah,
you know,
I 100% agree. I feel like the older I get, tell me if you agree with this, but the older I get, the more unavailable my passion is. And by that I mean, I think when I was younger, a client could, because I do videography, so like a client could come up to me and ask me to do something, and I could, slap my face, get the job done, get the paycheck, move on. And I'm like, the older I get, the less I can manage that. I'm like, oh, I really don't care about this. And I'm like, I'm going to be very not motivated to do it. Yep. And so it's like, for me personally, I'm like, oh, I got to get my thing rolling in the way I want it to, because I'm like, I'm super passionate about, I will say, like, I'm weirdly passionate about, like, individually passionate about music. So it's like, it's kind of a solo focus sort of thing. And if I'm not careful, it's a double-edged sword, because it can kind of leak into my life. Like, I can be, I can neglect aspects of my life that I should take care of because I'm so obsessed with music.
Yeah.
So it's like managing that well, but then also realizing that, like, okay, if I can just twist my life and point it in this direction and ultimately land here, it'll probably be better for my mental health than, working on stuff that I'm not truly passionate about, because that's torture,
Yeah,
it is.
Dude, my best friend Valeria, she actually made this sign for me.
Yeah.
She and I have talked many times about, over the years, she's a photographer, and I always have to brag on her. She did all of the photography, including the album cover for Taylor Swift's Lover album.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so she has got some big credits under her belt.
Yeah.
And after that, she had a few potential clients reach out to her about doing something, and the paycheck might have been good, but it was just not something she was even remotely interested in. Very not creative, wasn't gonna be something that was fulfilling to her. And she could have said yes to the paycheck, and she just said no because it didn't fit. It wasn't going to fulfill her. And sometimes she does think oh shit, I could really use that money right now. But always something comes through later, and it's like, this is why you didn't do it, because if you had said yes, you wouldn't have been able to do this new opportunity. You never know what's going to happen, but if you can stick to those principles, you'll be happier at the end of the day.
Well, I agree, and I think it is. It's risky, and a lot of people are scared to do that. But in a way, for myself personally, it's like, I don't know. Whenever I talk about these things, I am like that, and I want to become even more like that. And it's like, how do you manage that? I mean, it's really difficult to choose that. But I respect her for saying no to something that other people would say yes to, and buy a new car.
Yeah, exactly.
It's I completely agree. I'm in the same headspace as that. I've talked to some people, even older guys who are older musicians who have stopped playing music. That's my favorite people to talk to about music, because they'll talk to me like I'm with them, and they're like, yeah, man, you ever wish that you could just pick up the guitar and play every day? And I'm like, I do.
Dude, that's crazy.
They're like, ever wish you just had time to create? And I'm like, oh no, I do. And I'm like, and I promise you, when I'm your age, I'll still do it.
Still be like that.
Yeah. And I'm like, that's, to me, when I see people like that, I don't want to become them. And I'm like, you're uninspired, and you've chosen something else other than art. And I'm like, maybe we'll do this interview in 20 years, and I'll be that guy. It's like, I wish I was playing guitar.
Yeah.
But now whenever people talk to me like that, it's kind of my favorite thing to do. Be like, yeah, I do that every day.
Right. It must be it must be such a fear-based thing to feel like that, because even if you're swamped with, you got kids, you got a wife, you got a husband, you got all these things that require a lot of love and responsibility, and deservedly so, if you still love music, you don't have to do it for anybody else but yourself. You can pick it up at
it's true
midnight because you know that's when everybody's in bed, and you can spend 30 minutes just playing, learning a song you love, writing something. Like, you don't have to be the rock star if you don't want. If you still love music, you can still pick it up and do it. And like, that's just, it's a bummer to think that people set up that barrier in their brain.
Yeah. Well, they let it go, but they let it go to pursue different things, and there's nothing wrong with that.
No.
But I think for people who are in it for the long haul, it's like you just set your life up. You have different priorities, and some people are really successful in music and make a lot of money and have glamorous lifestyles. But like, my favorite people to talk to are like artists that have been doing it for a long time, have a dedicated fan base, and live within their means. Like, I meet people like that all the time.
And those aren't the people you really hear about all the time.
You don't hear about them. You don't. Everyone, when you go, I want to be a musician, I want to be a songwriter, everyone goes, oh, you want to be Harry Styles? Good luck, buddy. And I'm like, no, I don't want to be Harry Styles. I want to be me, and I want to make a living.
Yeah.
And for me, I think I did struggle with this early on. Is my ambition was so low, was very low. My ambition was like, I want people to listen to my music. I didn't give a crap about numbers. I didn't give a crap about streaming. I was like, I want people to listen to my music and enjoy it. And I was like, and I want to be able to play shows. And I started doing music, and by 2018, I really started. And then by 2020, right before COVID, I was like playing more shows than I've ever played in my life. People were digging the stuff. Like, my music was getting streams. And honestly, it was kind of an identity crisis for me. I was like, oh, shoot, what else? Like, I got to dream a little bit bigger than this. But I will say that I don't know if you agree with this, but I wonder where you come from. I never wanted to be like a rock star. I never wanted to play arenas. I never wanted to be Coldplay. You know what I mean? I never wanted any of that. I wanted to be like, there was this like I talked about earlier, like CD, DVD collection. I tell the story all the time. There was in my bedroom growing up, there was a DVD in my DVD player, just kind of stayed in there. And it was the DVD that was attached to a Jason Mraz CD. And what Jason Mraz record is? It's like the best one with like I'm Yours. The one with his like face drawn out.
Yeah, it's the white album cover with the drawing.
And I'm like, I wouldn't consider Jason Mraz I don't create music like that really. That's not an influence for me, but I do love Jason Mraz. But what I loved more was he had a DVD attached to that CD, and one of them you could watch like a live show, but then also they recorded him backpacking through Europe with a guitar and a videographer with him, and literally it's like probably 2006. This is probably, I'm just guessing the date. Yeah. It's probably before he ever had any like global success.
Right.
So no one knew who he was, and he's got his guitar, a backpack, and his friend on the video, and they're just going through these cities, meeting people, getting to know the culture, doing backyard concerts, doing small little theaters for people that he meets that day. Like he's like busking, he's doing all kinds of stuff.
Right.
And that was the most inspiring thing for me as a young person. Like I was like, man, that is wild. Like that was making it. I was like, which is weird because everyone else I talk to that loves music, they have a completely different idea. Like, to me, that was success. And it's like, probably not. Like, he probably wasn't making any money at all. And I'm like, just
probably having a lot of fun though.
But probably having a lot of fun. And I think that was something I always like attached. That's why I I love touring with a band, but also like touring, like recently, my wife has been learning bass, and I'm like, the idea of going on tour with just me and her, and like I use like a little drum track thing, and like
that'd be so cool.
I'm like, that's so much fun. It's like basically, it's so simple, and it's and I think for me, I'm a person who I struggle with anxiety, and like when I start thinking about things too big, I kind of collapse. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I don't know, simplicity for me is kind of a stability thing. Yeah. Especially when thinking about tours and all that kind of stuff.
That's a good point. Yeah, making things easier for yourself.
But also there's another aspect of me that I challenge myself. I'm like, maybe I should think bigger. I do have that aspect in me as well. And I think for the last 2 years, I've been like, okay, let's think a little bit bigger. Let's shoot a little higher, and then you might land there.
Right.
Like try to be Harry Styles, and you'll end up being. I'm trying to think of another person. Try to be Harry Styles.
Niall Horan.
Who's that?
The other One Direction guy.
Oh yeah,
I can name them all, brother.
Oh, really?
I saw them live in like 2015, dude.
I was gonna say, try to be Harry Styles, and you'll end up being Ben Rector.
There you go. Yeah, Ben Rector. I think he just came to Athens.
Really?
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. But dude, hell yeah. Let's go over to the last 5. I'm just gonna ask you 5 quick questions, and we'll be done. I use this bowl here, so you can kind of just pick and choose. Let the universe decide. Number 1.
What is my unexpected musical influence? That's a question for me, or am I asking you?
Oh yeah, you.
I want to know yours too.
I'll tell you.
You go first.
Oh shit. Okay. What was my unexpected musical influence? I mean, anybody who knows me knows Radiohead is like my favorite band, but I don't think you would necessarily get that from the music that's out there right now. It's just, but also Radiohead is very hard to like sound like. They're so unique. But if I had to choose somebody that like people wouldn't really know, maybe like, dude, yeah, this is a hard question. Maybe like a lot of shoegaze stuff, like My Bloody Valentine.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think, I think in the future you'll see that a little bit more, like with the kind of music I want to make. But the stuff that's come out in the last year and it's going to come out this year, it's all more like actually country influenced in the way of the songwriting.
Yeah.
And it's in the way of the production, or like old school. But I feel like I really love just weird shit, and I'm trying to get as weird as I can with it.
Yeah.
So maybe like a My Bloody Valentine, or like dude, I don't know, just stuff with weird sounds. Wow, I see how this feels being on the other end and being like, I don't know what to say.
I'm gonna go with Roy Orbison.
Oh, cool. Yeah,
I love Roy. That's like a recent obsession though. I had a buddy of mine.
Does he do Pretty Woman?
Yeah.
Is that him?
Yeah. But he's got a lot of great songs. And
right.
He was in his like, I'm pretty sure he was in his 60s or late 50s, and he put out like "You Got It," which is like a pop hit.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool to know he made music for such a wide period of time, but he's also got, like, you look up live Roy Orbison, and you will be blown away just by like
videos of him.
The sheer talent. Yeah, he's an insane vocalist.
Whoa.
Like, insane. And I'm not a vibrato guy. I like sing super straight.
Same.
And,
yeah.
But he is a guy. His voice just soars, and it's insane to me. And it's like one of those things where I wish I could go back in time and go see him live, like, because I can just imagine the room, because he's got like one of the most beautiful voices to me ever. But that's not like a cool band reference. I'm not like the Strokes.
I mean, but dude, Roy Orbison, like, that's what's cool about having such a, like, more of a depth to the stuff you listen to, is you can pull from things that people wouldn't quite necessarily pin on you. Yeah. And then, I mean, we're all kind of just taking inspiration from different things. So if you're taking an inspiration from a whole world of different genres and vibes, then you can use that to create something that doesn't really exist yet.
Yeah, I 100% agree.
Yeah. You want to check question number 2?
Question number 2. All right. Here you go. I'll ask you. You go first.
This is so much pressure.
What's on your musical rotation?
Let's check the Spotify.
I'll do the same.
This is a hard one to just name off the top of your head, you know?
Yeah.
So I always say, like, oh, let's check the Spotify. Well, obviously, Logan Pilcher.
Woo!
So to prepare for this interview. But boom, let's see what's been on the playlist lately. I've been getting back into Radiohead, like I said. Specifically like in Rainbows. Sorry, I'm like all stuffed up. In Rainbows is like my favorite album ever. But sometimes your favorite albums, you don't want to listen to it all the time. In fact, I don't want to listen to it like really at all, because I want to, when I do listen to it, I want to like make it an event, like sit down and really listen. But lately I'm like, let's just go back and vibe to literally my favorite album. It's almost like, I heard this quote. It's like, don't save that your favorite cologne, or don't not use your favorite thing because you want to save it for the right time.
Yeah.
Because then nothing will really be good enough for that, and then you don't end up enjoying it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how
something about like, especially whenever you're young, you're like a sponge.
Yeah.
And like you're able to consume music in a different way than you can in your later 20s. So it's like your musical influence. What I try to think about is like when I think about myself or like other artists, it's like we all grow up, we all have these different music tastes, and then we have our favorite records and we have our things, but they're uniquely ours because time moves on. And although you and your buddies may all love that record,
right,
it's like you were 18 years old consuming that record or whatever it is and pulling it in like no one else. Yeah. You know, in a way, like, you were like, if there's a certain age that you just kind of like soak things in, and it's like there's something special about that. That's a part of you, you know. And I try not to neglect that. Even the stuff that I'm like, you know, I might look back and be like, why was I so... I mean, I loved Kings of Leon growing up. I still love them. But I'm like obsessed with Kings of Leon. I'm like, that's part of me. And I'm like, I'm not going to neglect that. I'm going to pull up Sex on Fire every now and then.
Dude, that song rules. I don't care what anybody says. I love that song. Their first album was what I got obsessed with. Yeah. It was the only one I actually really got into, like heavy, was their very first album. Because some article was like, this is the best debut album of all time. And I was like, let's listen to it. And I was like, holy shit. Yeah, this is crazy to think that this is the same band that made
they have
Use
like
Somebody.
They almost have like a country kind of...
It's like a hillbilly, methed out rock and roll.
Yeah, like a Tallahena Sky. You ever heard that song?
Is that them?
It's one of, it's cool. It's an early Kings of Leon song.
Is it on that album?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, I'm just...
I don't know.
It could be... I know weird like B-side tracks by them.
Yeah, I don't think I know that one.
But I'm gonna see what's on my rotation.
Yeah, please.
So
yeah, I would say for me it's Radiohead. I'm getting back into Phoenix. Do you ever listen to them?
I love Phoenix.
Dude,
they're great.
Yeah.
I would say I'm gonna give a few.
Please.
I would say there's a band, I don't know anything about them. It's called Bonnie Doon. You ever heard of that?
No.
I guess Spotify just gave them to me.
Yeah.
But like, to me, I was having like a rough week about a few weeks ago, and I listened to that record, and it like with joy. And I'm like, anyone that can do that to me, I'm obsessed with this band. And I think they're still putting out the record, but the cool thing about this record is there's one song called Let There Be Music, and it's just upbeat. It's like 4 or 5 chords, the entire song, kind of like just vibing.
What's the band?
It's called Bonnie Doon.
Bonnie Doon.
But like, if you're ever like feeling down, it's like a burst of sunshine. And I'm like,
that's awesome.
And sometimes I need that kind of stuff just because my personal mental.
I'm gonna save this for later.
Save it, dude. But the whole record is really cool. I feel like they have this.
Dude, I think this was recommended to me as well. That album cover, just the sheet music looks very familiar.
Yeah, but there's a bunch of songs that they're putting out right now. But the EP that they have like 5 songs on there probably. I listened to that, and like every song has this like intertwined hope with but it recognizes pain and sorrow. So like it's kind of cool because it's like it's not neglecting your emotions, but it's like affirming your emotions and giving you like hope that it's gonna get better or whatever that feeling is. You know? And anything that does that, I'm like I feel like the older I get, the more I'm like less of I love sad songs. Like a good sad song that rips your heart to pieces is one thing, but a song that kind of like touches on the depth of sadness, but brings you to another place. It kind of like, I don't know. It just transcends that.
Yeah,
that
there's
thing.
a little more depth to that.
For some reason, yeah, and it's like it's hard to explain, but I do feel that way. Currently in my life, where like songs like that will touch me.
Yeah.
But other than that, I've been listening to. Me and my wife are both fans of Josiah and the Bonavilles. You ever heard of him?
No.
He's kind of like he became independent. I think he was signed at one point, put out a few records, and then became independent, and then became started posting on TikTok and Instagram all the time. So he's sort of like an underground TikTok star kind of thing. But
Josiah and the what?
Bonavilles. But he's got a cool story that's inspiring for me as an indie artist. I think he had some tough situations happen with record deals and typical label stuff.
Yeah.
Then went independent and then chose to just go all in on it and started producing songs in his room and started releasing a lot of material, releasing covers, just put out a bunch of songs throughout all of last year. And then now he's at a point where he booked 3 shows in Nashville, sold every single one of them out, and he's going on tour with, what's his name? Drew Holcomb.
Sounds familiar.
Drew Holcomb and the Neighbors. He's kind of like, I call him Dad Folk.
Cool.
But Josiah is to me, I've been a fan for a long time, and watching him kind of take his career into his own hands and do it on his own terms. He didn't book a show for a whole year.
Oh,
he just went all in on like Patreon.
Yeah.
And releasing music all the time. And it's kind of like an interesting roadmap for other indie musicians who are like, how do I, basically he just brought his costs down. He just the promotion, his I think he's releasing and mixing everything himself. So
yeah.
And it's inspiring for me because I'm totally capable of doing something like that. But he kind of created a following. He's also insane. He's a great musician. But then other than that, I I've been listening to Medium Build. You ever heard of Medium Build?
No, I don't think so. Give me a lot of new artists to check out.
It's kind of like
Medium Build.
I think people around here know. First person who introduced me to him was
He's got a sweet stash.
Was a guy in Athens. And he showed me his songs. He said, "Dude, your stuff reminds me of this guy." And this guy's kind of got an aggressive sort of style of music. He's kind of emotional, aggressive.
He lives in Alaska.
Yeah.
Whoa.
But he's cool. He's got a lot of good songs.
That's cool.
Yeah. That's all I'll say.
Hell yeah, I'll definitely listen to him. All right. Yeah, let's leave it at that. It's a good few. Let's check question number 3.
Question number 3. Let's see. Song you wish you wrote.
Yeah, I wrote that last night because I like that question.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I already thought of an answer.
What's that?
My go-to one has been this song by Pavement called "Spit on a Stranger."
I've heard that. Yeah.
You know that one?
Yeah.
I love that song. I love it's something I feel like I would have written, I could have in some universe written that. Yeah. At least because I just love the way it is. It's pretty simple, and just a song I would love to have written. It's something, and I don't think I would have gone as far off from the way they made it too. You know
really?
What I mean? I don't know. Something about that song just clicked the very first time I heard it. That to me is a song that if you wish you wrote it, it's probably because the first time you heard it, it just felt like you already knew it in a way.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel about that song. I felt like I already knew it when I first heard it.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of mine. That's hard.
It's tough. It's
a hard
tough
question.
one. Yeah.
I'm going to go back to my Spotify, see anything on here.
Because there's plenty of songs you love that you don't necessarily think, I wish I wrote that one.
I don't know. I mean, I think Leonard Cohen has a song called "Bird on the Wire," and I think it's a beautiful song. I remember hearing the lyrics to it for the first time because Leonard Cohen is kind of a poet more than a singer, you know, kind of.
Yeah.
He's not gonna wow you with his voice, but he has a lyric in it where he goes, let me read it to you. Okay, 1 second. Okay, like a baby stillborn, like a beast with his horn, I have torn everyone who reached out for me. And I love that line.
Oh, shit. Whoa.
And I love it because it's kind of like...
That's crazy.
I don't know why. I think it touched me because I think that it's like being indirectly and directly hurting people is like kind of the story of your human condition. It's like sometimes we hurt people because we're just unaware and naive. We say something or we neglect something, and it's like, or you just don't show up for some reason.
Right.
And then also sometimes we're evil. Like sometimes something comes over us and we can make wrong decisions and hurt people. You know, and you look back, you're like, why did I do that? I don't know. I love that song.
Whoa.
That song's
heavy.
Good. It's heavy, but like lyrics like that, kind of like where it make you dwell and on. You're like,
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
Two totally different comparisons.
Yeah.
A baby that has died, that had no choice in the matter, and then something that directly.
Yeah, and I think it
hurt people.
directly speaks to me because whenever I was like, I think second grade, my mom had a stillborn baby, and for some reason that line, because like I understand that, like I understand the pain that like brought to my family, and then also, but also the other side of that is like, you know, just the what do you normally think of when you hurt someone,
right?
But yeah, that song, I would take it.
That's a good one. Yeah, I haven't listened to a lot of Leonard Cohen in general. Obviously, Hallelujah.
Yeah.
You can't escape
that one's awesome.
One.
I mean,
yeah, it's awesome. But I've tried to listen to some of his stuff. The one I really know is the "You Want It Darker." I'm like, Jesus, dude, this guy's voice is wild.
Well, it's like that's him in his like 60s or 70s. He's got like this epic God sounding voice.
Yeah.
But you know, he put out a record after he died.
Is that the one? I think isn't that "You Want It Darker"?
No, it's a new record after that.
Oh.
You need to check it. It's the Thanks for the Dance. And I think that Leonard Cohen is one of the coolest dudes.
Yeah.
Because he you know, he's popular in the 60s and 70s, and then he like joins like a cult thing. He like becomes like a monk.
Whoa.
Loses his fortune, all of it.
I didn't know that.
And then comes back as like a 60, 70-year-old. Books one of the biggest tours he's ever booked in his life. Comes out with new records, and then towards the end of his life, he's got the "You Got It Darker," like that whole record, which is great. But then at the end of his life, he dies, and he has demos that he was actually working on with his son, and they end up putting together like a beautiful band, and they re-record these songs and put his demo voice over the whole thing.
Oh wow!
And actually, the last song on it is a poem that his last public outing. They recorded he's sitting at a podium talking to a group of people, and this is the last time he's ever been in public, really. And he speaks a poem, and they put music around that poem for like the last track. So it's kind of a very cool. Like if you're into Leonard Cohen, like the whole journey of his career is interesting, and like even the last project is really cool,
Yeah, that's interesting. That's the last album he put out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's Thanks for the Dance. That's
okay.
The name of the record. If it's like, I don't know. Whenever I talk about Leonard Cohen, I feel like a lot of people kind of roll their eyes because they're like, you're either into it or you're like, this is weird.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of people I want to get into.
Yeah,
like Bob Dylan.
Yeah,
and like all these kind of poet types that I'm like, it's so cool. Like I want to be cool. I want to like them, and eventually I'll find one specific thing that I'm like, oh, that's what I love. And sometimes it's not the classic, which is weird. Like my favorite Bob Dylan album is, I think it's called New Morning.
Yeah.
And it's like nowhere near like his top 5 or 10 fan favorite albums. It just happens to be the one I like because it's like each song is like 2.5 minutes. He's actually like singing a melody instead of doing the na 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 thing. And that's just what I gravitate towards too. So maybe there's a Leonard Cohen one in there that's like, that's the one for me.
Well, I mean, if you listen to his earlier stuff, he has one record with like the song Suzanne. That's one of the big ones. I think the Bird on the Wire is in the same record.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like him on acoustic singing. He's got a lighter voice. He's not as deep.
Okay.
And during the 80s, he has some like weird. They like tried to like make his stuff cool. So they have like kind of like, you know, electronic drum sounds and synths and stuff, and like really cheesy bass parts. But like, if you can get past that for that portion of it, it's like the beginning and the end for him are really like his sweet spots to me. And actually Hallelujah was a song that he recorded in that like very kind of cheesy era. So like his biggest song was really made popular by other artists covering it.
Right. Jeff Buckley.
Yeah. Yeah. But he's people compare those two writers as like you get to pick what kind of writer you are. Like I feel like you can compare yourself to Bob Dylan or Leonard Cohen, and you're either going to be one or the other. And one of them is like Leonard Cohen wrote 50 verses for every song. He was sitting there like there's so many versions of Hallelujah in verses because he would perform them differently over the course of years. Like if you watch live videos, he'll sing a different verse.
Whoa.
And it's interesting, very interesting. So he's just very prolific, very much like if something's not right, I'm going to keep working on it until it is kind of writer. And I think Bob Dylan is more of a stream of consciousness sort of writer, so he probably would finish songs a lot quicker than. Not saying always the case for either or,
right?
But you just kind of like your process. It's like I don't feel like either process is wrong. You know, it's just like a matter of
it's whatever works for you,
and what you're okay with. Because sometimes the stream of consciousness is the best. It's like it's less edited, but Leonard Cohen is so edited, and so like sincere and like intentional.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I lean that way. I'm like, I want myself to be very intentional, and I want to look back on it and just be like, no, like.
Yeah.
You know?
I'm trying to lean into that as well a little bit more, but it always comes stream of consciousness for me at first. And then it's like, okay, let's try to be as little judgment as possible. And if it sounds like gibberish, maybe it is, or maybe there's something there that you take and then you be intentional with that one part and expand from there. But at the end of the day, I'm trying to be a lot better nowadays with feeling really good about every word I say. Whereas back in the few years ago, I was just happy to have lyrics that sounded okay. Yeah. You know, and now I'm like, no, like that's not enough. Like you've done that. Let's challenge ourselves to be more intentional and be like really like honest about what you're saying, and you know, be honest with yourself when it comes to a lyric. Like, does that feel right, or does this feel exactly what it needs to be, or are you just phoning it in?
Yeah. Well, I agree 100%. It's like, you know, deep down, you know, and everyone does know. It's like, are you willing to live with that? And I feel like I've known to a point where I've produced songs fully and then go, I can't release it. And I'm like, I've spent, $1,000 working on this thing. And I'm like, yeah, this is not coming out.
Damn.
And it's like, that's happened to me a lot, actually.
That sucks.
But to me, it's not it's more of a wisdom that I want to gain and know before. I want to know before I start recording a lot of times. But sometimes you just can't know. You record the song, you're like, doesn't hit right, doesn't do it. And sometimes it's lyrics problems or whatever. One thing that I have found that is like the advice that I have for myself is whenever I'm struggling to make there's a part of the song that like my pride will like hold on to certain parts of songs that I think are really cool, like a lyric or a line, whatever.
Yeah.
And then I'll try to fit everything around that.
Yeah.
And then sometimes what I have to do is delete that line that I love, and the song will come together.
Well,
like sometimes it's the thing.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes it's the thing that I think is the coolest aspect or what draws me into the song that is actually the same thing, like holding the song from its capability of being what you want it to be. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like if you just take it away, you stop trying to fit fit it in. It's like a puzzle piece that you're trying to force into this piece.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, let's
it's like the rest of the song outgrew that part.
It did. And it's interesting because that could be the most like organic part that you like wrote in your room that made you cry, but then you throw the rest of the song around it and you're like, when I took that out, it actually just comes together. And it's interesting to me.
Yeah.
But
Almost like a spaceship going into space, and it has to lose
Yeah.
the thing that got it there.
Yeah.
The rocket
Sometimes.
propulsion.
Yeah.
Whatever the hell it's
That's
called.
That's a good analogy.
Thank you, dude. As I was thinking it, I was like, this is perfect.
Been waiting to use this one.
yeah. I've been sitting on it forever. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of how it feels. The most important part is the place or the part of the ship carrying the astronauts, but you need to lose the biggest, all that shit beforehand, because otherwise it's just going to hold everything else back.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, dude, let's go to question 4. We're going a long time, which I'm all about. But
Sorry.
No, dude, I can talk for forever.
I can too. I just work at home on my computer all day. So
Yeah, you're like, I don't want to go back to work.
Dream artist or producer to work with. Who do I want to work with?
I could see
Probably
Blake Mills.
Blake Mills, yeah. Probably Blake Mills, yeah.
Right there, dude. I saw him live like a month ago, 2 months ago.
Was he touring
in
with
Atlanta?
Like the Palladino?
Yeah.
Heck yeah.
It was so sick, dude.
But I'm like, his. If I worked with him, I would say, hey, make me a pop record. That's what I would say.
Totally.
Because
like what he did with Alabama Shakes.
Yeah, Alabama Shakes, like Perfume Genius.
Yeah,
He
dude.
does,
I need to go back.
He did the recent Jack Johnson record.
Oh,
It's actually really cool.
Weird.
Yeah.
I didn't know Jack Johnson put out a new album.
Yeah. Is yours Blake Mills? You said Blake Mills?
What?
Was your dream producer Blake Mills?
I just said Blake Mills
For me.
What I was guessing for you, which is
you?
why we both said
Yeah.
that at the same time. It'd be easy for me to say Nigel Godrich because Radiohead producer.
Yeah.
That would be awesome. If I didn't say that though, who I've gotten into recently, I've really loved Flaming Lips now.
Yeah.
Like all in. And the guy who produced their stuff, or at least their 2 big albums, and the guy who produced, do you know Sparkle Horse?
No, I don't.
That would be, you should check him out. He's very interesting. But the guy who produced some of his stuff, his name's Dave Friedman. I don't know how you say it. And he has a very extensive list of awesome artists he's produced. And you don't really know who he is for whatever reason, one of those producers that just kind of lies in the shadows and just crushes.
Yeah.
So he would be somebody I'd love to work with. Jim O'Rourke as well. Do you know him?
No.
He's worked with Wilco
Yeah.
and like some bigger bands. He has his own solo stuff that's really, really wild and out there. I think you would like some of his stuff. Some of it's hard to get into because it's instrumental and just weird. But then some of his stuff is a little more down to earth. So that's where I would start. And it's really the only stuff I do listen to. But yeah, so like Jim O'Rourke, Dave Friedman would be cool. And then of course, Nigel Godrich would be awesome. And then why not Rick Rubin? Let's throw him in there too.
Rick Rubin,
Yeah, who doesn't want to work with Rick
him
Rubin?
to be in the room.
Yeah, just vibing.
Yeah.
So Blake Mills would be yours.
Yeah,
That'd be cool.
Probably Blake Mills. But I mean, I feel like I am ultimately like if I had a bunch of money, like just like a bunch of money, I would want to make records with my friends.
That'd be awesome.
And I got my buddy. His name's Jonathan Ellie. His project is called Ellie, and he makes like cool, dreamy sounding pop music. And he started off as a rapper, and he's actually the person like he grew up in the same area of South Georgia, middle of nowhere. And he's one of my only musician friends that I like got to connect with. He taught me like before I ever learned about gain staging and like appropriate audio stuff, I was learning how to do like production tricks on Logic with him, like building beats and all this stuff. So it's kind of an interesting, like he was a friend that came in, I became friends with and learned a lot about music production from at an interesting time in my life. But now he's in LA doing his thing, and he's a great artist and kills it. But I'm like, if I had money, I wouldn't want to go work with Blake Mills. I'd rather fly out and work with my buddy Jonathan Ellie and just hang and like have like the best time of my life.
Yeah.
Or like I have a buddy, two buddies, Connor Rogers, who is like a educated guy who plays keyboard, but he like has a normal job and like kills his. He has like a 9 to 5 that's like awesome. You know, he like just a normal guy who has an extreme like keyboard talent. He's just insane. And I'm like, people like, and his brother Chase Rogers is an insane drummer. I'm like, how much fun would it be to be like, hey guys, take off work for a week, I'll pay you to come make a record with me. You know, like
that would be awesome.
That's the kind of things I think about. I don't really think about working with people I haven't met, because I'm like, I'm really uninterested. I'm like, I don't know you. Like, it might not be a vibe, but I know my friends that I'm like, dude, if I could afford to get us in the room together, you know, it would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
And that's more how I think. I feel like.
And I think that's where the world is going more and more.
Yeah.
Where people meet friends online all the time.
Yeah.
And like one of my closer musical friends I met through this podcast, he lives in Minneapolis. Shout out to Bobby Rethwish.
Yeah.
And he's got some of the craziest music I've ever heard in my life. It's like pop music being sucked into a black hole.
Yeah.
And I would love to work with him one day. And I've never met him, you know. And some people you don't need to meet in person to even know like, oh, this would be a vibe. But like you would choose that ideally over somebody who is quote unquote like super well known and famous.
Yeah.
Just for like the notoriety of it, but maybe it's not really what works.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. And I also think that I'm the worst possible person to work with a producer. You can ask anyone I've worked with, like that's pretty. You can ask my buddy Blake. You can ask Tommy. We did a song together, and I bet Tom will be honest with you. Like, yeah, Logan's a lot. Like, I'm a lot. Like,
just because you know what you want. You're very
know
specific.
Just enough about producing my own music that I'll get myself in trouble. And by that I mean I'm like, I work very hands on my own stuff, so it's very hard for me to relinquish control. And me and Tommy did a song together, and I didn't. I'm not saying I did that then, but I'm saying like in general, I have to watch myself.
Yeah.
Like if I'm not careful, I will overstep my welcome, because whenever you're working with a producer, you're asking them to give their vision to the song.
Right.
And just for me, I'm like it's a personal growth thing that I'll probably have to work on it for a few years before I work with anyone else, just because I'm like, I know that it's a problem for me, like just being too controlling and because I know, like I said, I know just enough to get myself in trouble. But I love working with other people, and I love what comes of it. It's just a matter of like, I'm probably just on my own little journey right now of like producing my own stuff.
Yeah, which is awesome.
And hopefully one day I'll have a better, relationship with that, and I can kind of let go. That's my hope. It's like maybe I need to make maybe that feeling is just me going, hey, you need to make these records by yourself,
right, for
a little bit, and then maybe on the other side of this, I'll because honestly, I feel like I would be a lot healthier if I could just write and focus on writing, and then have someone to produce with that helps carry out that vision. But right now in this season of life, I'm like, no, I'm just gonna produce and mix my own stuff. Yeah, which is fun. Like that like the Always Mine but Different was really an experiment, because that's the first song that I have mixed and produced. Like there's no other. It's just me by myself. Awesome.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Thank you. I think it's been a journey getting to that point where it's like, I'm proud of this.
Yeah, I don't feel like it sounds different. Like I wouldn't be like, oh, that's the one he did. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. Just in the way of like, I think it certainly holds up just as strong as every other song you got.
Thanks.
And I also maybe personally gravitate towards it more than any other one because of just the beat. Like
it's aggressive. It's more aggressive kind of thing.
Yeah, that's the shit I like really get into.
Yeah. Well, I'm getting into that myself, and I think that I'm really right now I'm just passionate about, creating that. Like, last thing I'll say,
You're good, dude.
I listened back to my demos of my last record, and I got a really talented guy to mix. I produced my last record by myself, but I got someone else to mix it, and ended up going with. I was considering Tommy. I was considering a few other friends, but I ended up going with my buddy Hunter West, and he's kind of like he mixes in a pop kind of way, like it's pretty aggressive mixing. But he mixed it and it sounded awesome. And I was able to send him the tracks, and he sent me back, and I was like, we're good. You know, it was pretty streamlined.
Yeah.
Because when you find the right person for the job, it's just usually you don't have to fight it very hard at all. But it was a hard decision to make because I have so many friends that are so talented to figure out who I wanted to mix. But then I was listening back to those I mixed the record myself before I ever hired anyone to mix. And honestly, it feels like I made the record twice. Because you make the record in your room, you mix it in the room to sound good.
Yeah.
And then you send the tracks individually to someone else, and they get to mix it in their way. And then you're always kind of like fighting you want it to be what you had, but better. And so what I found is that like there was magic in my mixes. Do you know what I mean? I was like, there's something special about what I was doing, even though I didn't know what I was doing. And I was like, I just needed to become more educated. And so my ear, because I like my ear, I like the choices that I make, but I need to make those choices, but elevate that.
Right.
And so I feel like for a long time I mixed all the, I did stem mastering, which means I mix like the drums together, the low end together, the synth, the guitars, and the vocals. And I sent around 5-6 stereo files to my buddy. I have a buddy named Andrew Taylor in Portland. Not Portland. He's in Oregon. He's outside of Portland, but he would mix the stems and master them. So basically he was doing like the last 15% so he didn't have much control. He just had like a few tracks to work with and mix it as well as he could. And I found that was a good flow for me because it was like, it still stayed true to like my thing. But it didn't change that much. You know what I mean? But it was like, just elevated it. But then the Always Mine one, I just did normal mastering with him. So I was like, that mix didn't really need to be stemmed out. So it's like, as I'm getting farther and farther and gaining more and more knowledge of this, I'm able to take on more and more control of the mixing process rather than sending it out. If that makes sense.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's a lot of fun. It's a very it's like a self-accomplishment. You know what I mean? I'm like, yeah. Right. I'm proud of what I made, you know, because it's really hard. It's like when I hear what Tommy does, like all his records sound so good.
It's crazy.
And then, I mean, the Lighthearted record. Yep. That to me, that's an outlier.
There's not a bad song on it.
No, there's not a bad song on it, but that's an outlier. Like Tommy has like he does the Well Kept thing, and it's like super cool. He has this whole thing with Zach Crook. It's like a whole different thing. Yeah. And it's like awesome as well. But then he does the Lighthearted record, and to me, I'm like, just those three. If you were just to take a Well Kept, Zach Crook, and a Lighthearted, you listen to those one song from each of those projects, you'd be like, holy crap, the same person.
Not to mention Elijah.
Yeah, Elijah too. There's like, I feel like 50, 60 artists to talk about.
So many.
But I'm talking about like 3 different, widely different genres. Like one's like an experimental R&B kind of thing with like aggressive like tones to it and like kind of a tapey sound. Right. And then his thing is like indie rock, like
kind of emo adjacent.
Yeah. And then you have like a folk, like you know, I mean, a very lush folk, right? Beautiful, like songwriter. They're a band, but you know, like.
But it feels intimate.
It's organic. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, like that is like 3 widely different. I respect that in anyone, like a producer that can, because I'm a one-trick pony. I'm like anybody who wants to work with me, you're gonna get what you're gonna get. It's gonna sound like this, you know.
Yeah. That's good, dude. I wish I had a little bit more of that. I feel like I'm all over the place sometimes. Really? Like I'm just interested in so many different vibes and genres, and you know, if you did my Spotify on shuffle, you would get a lot of different stuff, which can be cool, but because it shows off range. But at the same time, it's like, you know, an identity crisis in a way of like, what am I really? You know, what do I really want? You know, what I did with Tommy is different way different than what the the new few songs that are coming out soon. So it's like, I don't know, I can't stay in one place, and I kind of admire the fact that you can, exactly, like, this is
Well, I
the
think
vibe.
it definitely evolves. Like I have a song called Infinite Sunshine. Tommy rips guitar all over it, and it's like honestly a Strokes song.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
like
let me go
that's the
listen to that
vibe.
one.
Check it out. That one's interesting.
Yeah.
Like I have some outliers where I'm like, I don't know what I was into. Like I just like, I don't know. There's just certain like songs I'm like, I don't, that kind of are outliers. But
I kind of felt that way about your song, Other Than War.
Really?
Yeah, I really like that one.
That's
I
cool.
like the minor chord that hangs a little too uncomfortably long before it like
That's
resolves.
I kind of felt like Radiohead doing that one.
Yeah, yeah.
Kind of.
It fits like a more experimental vibe, I thought.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, that one's fun though because I found that chord progression. It's like you're hitting the 1 and then you go to the 6 and then you walk it down and you hit like you're hitting some notes that are like in the minor key, but you just were in this like very folky major thing. And that's an example of like songwriting where it's like the lyrics in that song. I love the lyrics in that song because they kind of like follow the there's like an up and there's a down. You know what I mean? And it's like I think that lyric
and as above, so below.
It's like
situation.
plastic surgery, live forever, never want to die.
Yeah,
like that's the line that's being said. But before it is sunshine, French fries, life is such a breeze, hot tubs, back rubs, favorite football teams, and then plastic. Or the what's the line? It's tell your children follow all your dreams, and then plastic surgery, live forever, never want to die, and then like that's the part where it goes to that minor. I don't know. I love stuff like that.
Yeah, it fits very well.
Yeah,
dude. Let's wrap this up with the last question here, number 5.
What do we got?
What are we ending with?
What's our time right now?
Let's check, dude. We're putting up numbers on this.
I want this to be the longest podcast yet.
I think it probably is. I think we're hitting an hour 35, hour 40.
We're about to get on Joe Rogan territory.
I know, dude. 4-hour long apps. I don't know how anybody could do that.
Yeah. Best and worst decade of music. Oh, this is
best and worst decade of music.
This is gonna be hard, because it's gonna be offensive. Like some people are not gonna like this answer.
Doesn't matter. Who cares?
I feel like to make this fair, let's go. You can't go past. You can't go. You have to pick 60s on.
Yeah, a lot of people try to do the loophole.
Like the 40s. I'm like, well, the recording back then sucked. So.
Yeah. I'm like, also name a 40s artist. You can't.
Yeah. All right. You want to go first? You want me to go first?
I'll go first because I've said it a million times, dude. Everybody knows how I feel. Worst decade, 80s. I'm just saying it.
Yeah.
It's all the hair metal, that kind of shit, and like the overuse of like weird quirky synths and gated reverb on every snare always. But of course I know there's some great albums from the 80s, Tears for Fears, things like that. So it's like, yeah, it's a blanket sweep statement. That's just the point of the question. So I'd say worst is 80s. Best, I usually would say, I usually say 2010s because that's just like what we said earlier. You get attached to something at a certain time when you're like a sponge and you're just constantly taking in new music. And that was the 2010s for me. I honestly have loved the 2020s so far, but same thing. I'm just like a sponge right now. So if I couldn't say those, then I would say like, if we're getting specific, like 67 to 77 or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
What would you say?
I would say, the best decade to me would probably be like, if you could pick like 65 to 75.
Yeah, you can do that. I think that's fair.
I mean, especially coming from I love Joni Mitchell and like, I don't know, all those kind of singer-songwriter folk people, and that's like their prime. That's their
totally.
And but then picking the worst, I'd probably go 90s.
Ooh.
And that's
interesting.
Yeah. And that's offensive towards my wife. She loves 90s music, and I think that the 90s, I didn't really grow up on it. Like all I listened to growing up was like DC Talk. So
DC Talk.
You don't know that? DC Talk?
No. What's that?
It's like the most generic like Christian young people.
Well, there you go. That's why I don't know it.
Well, it's probably like my dad was a worship leader growing up, and then also like the 90s were very like tough on my family in general. Like I remember it just being like we didn't have fun growing up. Like we had fun growing up as a family, but like music was not our outlet, if that makes sense. I think we just kind of like my family just kind of kept their nose to the ground, and like we're trying to survive, you know. But my dad loved, you know, like 80s music, so I have to leave 80s out because I listened to Genesis and Phil Collins and all Journey. Like that's my dad's.
I've seen Journey twice.
Really?
I've seen Journey twice.
Well, it's probably how you probably don't like the 80s.
Yeah, I got burnt out on Loverboy, and Night Ranger, and all that stuff. Yeah.
Well, for me, I'm like 90s are just kind of a hole for me, honestly. Yeah. Growing up, because I didn't listen to it a lot, but I've listened to it as an adult. You know, like you just go back and you're like, oh, there's some great records that came out in the 90s. Like, right. Like the Radiohead, didn't early Radiohead, like kind of like, did they release stuff in the 90s? 90s?
Yeah, I think Pablo Honey, their first album was like 91, maybe 92. I don't know.
I like the Wilco AM record. That's a 90s record. I like a lot of 90s stuff, but I think in general, I was just like, I feel like the world was in a weird spot creatively. I feel like the 90s technology had, like 80s and 90s really, were like, we were going from analog to digital, and so there's a lot of stuff that just sounds like, oh, they're trying this out. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like before, like the 70s, we were kind of like they mastered the tape and the analog board, and they were making records that are going to sound phenomenal for the rest of time. And now I feel like right now we've just now kind of hit the point with digital where it's like the last 20 years have been like really high quality recordings and everything. It feels a little less you know, it's like when they found autotune, you know, every track was like autotune.
Right. I feel like maybe in 10 years people will look at us and think like, oh, they were figuring out the home studio thing.
Yeah.
You know,
definitely.
Like where everybody can just get a, you know, Scarlett 2i2 and you know, the Shure SM758 or whatever, and then just like make beats on Ableton and whatever, and people will be like, oh, they were just starting to figure out how to do that. Then, because it started really becoming widely available only a few years ago.
I mean, that's the only way I think I would ever be able to make a record. I've never had a ton of money to spend on making music. I've always just kind of done it, you know, and then figured out how to make it sound as well as I could with other friends involved or whatever. And I feel like that's most people's story right now. It's like not a lot of people are going into the studio with thousands of dollars in their budget. They're just like making
and they're still making great stuff.
They're making great stuff, and it sounds better than the 60s. So here we are, you know.
Take that, 60s and 80s and every other generation.
60s sounds awesome. It just sounds lo-fi, you know. Now that we have everything we hear now is like there's no processing involved. It's like mic to computer. It's like
DI.
It's not going through anything. It's like so dry that it's like weird.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Logan Pilcher, I think we finally made the longest On That Note episode yet. So thank you for coming in, man. It's been a blast. Everybody needs to go listen to your newest tune. Always mine, but different. Sorry, my notes went down for a sec. But yeah, dude, it's a blast having you on. I'm glad we got to just chat for a long time. And
it's been fun.
It's been awesome. Yeah.
Thanks, man.
You have any tour dates coming up you want to promote? Anything you want to shout out?
I'm booking right now for September and October.
Okay, cool.
So
we'll be on the lookout.
Yeah.
Sweet. Yeah. Awesome. Logan, thanks again for coming on, man. I'll talk to you later.
Thanks.
I tell myself that I'm not bitter.
Thank you again for tuning into the newest episode of On That Note with Parker Whirling. Remember, not only can you listen to the episodes on Apple Podcast and Spotify, but you can also watch the episodes on my YouTube channel, which is linked in the description below. And on that note, I'll see you guys next time.
I'm all of these things.